The astonishing story between Israel and Palestine takes us back thousands of years to the days of early Christianity. The land they both stand on is sacred to multiple religions, including Christianity. From a biblical perspective, Palestine and Israel's role in Christianity begins with the religion's oldest known written records. To understand how Christianity portrays Israel and Palestine, we need to journey back to the days when the concept of a promised land drew early Christians to the region. In this biblical saga, we learn about the crucial role that Israel and Palestine play in the religion. From the days of early Christianity to the time after Jesus' crucifixion, here's the astonishing story between Israel and Palestine, according to the Bible. It's no secret that tension has escalated between Israel and Palestine, but how do Christians tell their story? To better understand this, we need to identify the initial connection between the two. So, where does the biblical connection to Israel and Palestine begin? Let's start with the Old Testament, around the 19th or 20th century BCE. The concept of a Holy Land started in Genesis 12:2 and 3, when God promised Abraham that he would create a covenant. It would make a great nation out of Abraham's descendants and bless them. This land was called Canaan, which the book of Genesis described as a land flowing with milk and honey. Canaan was an ancient region that encompassed parts of Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, and Jordan. While other modern-day nations also once made up this region, Israel and Palestine would become the homes for many of Christianity's key moments. Let's get back to the story. This concept of a covenant certainly didn't happen overnight. While it begins with Abraham, God's covenantal promise is passed on to Jacob, Abraham's grandson. This is where we hear the term Israel for the first time, except it doesn't mean what you think it does. The word is often interpreted as God struggles or God prevails. One of the first records of the word being used was when it was handed to Jacob. He spent an entire evening wrestling with a mysterious figure, and during the struggle, he demanded a blessing. This mysterious figure touched Jacob's hip socket, which made him realize he had been wrestling with God. At the end of the confrontation, Jacob's opponent changed his name to Israel, as he overcame struggles with humans, and most importantly, with God. His sons also inherited the name Israelites. Despite dreams of a promised land, a famine forced the men to move to Egypt under Joseph's leadership. Joseph was Jacob's 11th son, and played a crucial role in the Israelites' journey from Canaan to Egypt, where he was a high-ranking government official. Unfortunately, a new pharaoh believed the Israelite population was a threat and forced them into slavery, where they performed manual labor and were treated with extreme cruelty. As you can imagine, the Israelites suffered immensely during this time, but help was on the way. Now we jump ahead to the Exodus, when God called upon Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt and to freedom. As the story goes, God sent 10 plagues to convince the Pharaoh to release the Israelites. After wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, the Israelites finally reached Canaan, the Promised Land. Joshua led the Israelites into Canaan and conquered the land, using military force when necessary. From there, they divided the land among 12 tribes of Israel, with each tribe receiving a designated portion of the Promised Land. Here's where we get into the geography of the land. The Samaria, Galilee, and Judea regions are significant places in the Old Testament. The ancient region of Samaria sat on part of modern-day Israel and the Palestinian territories. Its main city was also called Samaria and served as the northern kingdom of Israel's capital. This land gained prominence during the period of the divided monarchy, leading to the creation of the northern kingdom of Israel. After Solomon's death, the northern tribes rebelled against the house of David, and Jeroboam became the northern kingdom's first king. That means this region played a central role in the histories of the northern kings. Its residents also faced criticism for disobeying God's commands and sometimes tense interactions with Judea. Next, we have Galilee, most commonly associated with the ministry of Jesus Christ. Many of the key events in his life occurred on this land. It's also the home to Nazareth, Capernaum, and Tiberias. This is where he walked on water, fed 5,000, and called his disciples, including Peter, James, and John. Today, we know the land as Northern Israel. Our last region is Judea, and you don't have to know much about the Bible to be familiar with this land. You may know it better as the West Bank. Located in the central and southern part of ancient Israel, Judea bordered on the Mediterranean Sea to the west, the Dead Sea to the east, and Samaria to the north. It also housed Jerusalem. Judea became the focal point of King David's monarchy and the religious and political center of the kingdom. Under King David's leadership, the Israelites captured Jerusalem and turned it into the capital of the United Kingdom of Israel. Jerusalem became the religious and political center of the Israelite kingdom, and pilgrimages to the city for festivals such as Passover were common. Then we have the New Testament and the ministry of Jesus. Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey as crowds cheered. They recognized him as the Messiah, a fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies about the coming of a king. His connection to Israel was undeniable. He was born in Bethlehem, brought up in Nazareth, and spent his early ministry days in the region surrounding the Sea of Galilee. Today, the Sea of Galilee is known as Lake Kinneret, or Lake Tiberias. It's the largest freshwater lake in Israel and is located in the northern part of the country. The Messiah's life took a dramatic turn when he openly opposed the religious authorities of his time and criticized their practices and teachings. His growing popularity made him a threat to those in charge. Although Jesus' kingdom was spiritual, not political, the Roman authorities of the time feared that he would challenge their rule. Judas Iscariot sold Jesus out to the religious authorities, and on the night of the iconic Last Supper, he was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. But what does this have to do with Israel and Palestine? Well, a lot, because all of these events occurred in or near Jerusalem. Jesus also walked the city's path of the Via Dolorosa, meaning the way of suffering, to reach the crucifixion site. This brings us to the Old Testament's Zechariah and the New Testament's Revelation. Both prophetic books contain visions and prophecies about Jerusalem's fate at the end of times. Visions of the restoration of Jerusalem fill the book of Zechariah, who lived during the period when Israelites returned to the land from exile. His prophecies provided hope and encouragement for rebuilding Jerusalem, but some had a future-oriented dimension, pointing toward a more ultimate and transcendent restoration. Revelation, the last book of the New Testament, contains apocalyptic and symbolic language, where Jerusalem was represented as the New Jerusalem, or the Holy City. Interpretations of these pieces of scripture have concluded that this means that one day, Jerusalem will rise again and become the sacred Christian site that in biblical terms it once was. These theories refer to the final events of human history, suggesting that one day Jerusalem will be a place of divine dwelling, righteousness, and ultimate peace, all of which would happen in the land we know as Palestine and Israel. From tales of a promised land to the place Jesus took his last steps, the connections between Israel, Palestine, and Christianity are undeniable. The astonishing biblical story of Israel and Palestine begins with God promising Abraham a covenant, a land that he and his people could rule and claim as their own. Along the way, we find the first time that the terms Israel and Israelite were used, and the powerhouse that was the land of Canaan. One thing is certain, Israel and Palestine sit on some of Christianity's most sacred land, making them the backdrop of numerous biblical tales.